Welcome to our deep dive into Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. Now, this isn't just some dusty old philosophy book. We're going to actually explore how its insights can be helpful in your everyday life.
And what makes meditations really unique is that it wasn't meant to be a grand philosophical statement. It's more like we're peeking into Marcus Aurelius's private journal, his personal wrestling with Stoic principles while ruling an empire.
Yeah, it's almost like a behind-the-scenes look at an emperor's mind. I mean, this is the guy who led Rome through plagues wars, you name it. Yet his personal writings are all about finding inner peace and virtue. That contrast alone makes this deep dive super interesting.
It really does. It highlights a central point of Stoicism, the difference between what we can control and what we can't. And that's really the foundation for understanding how to apply these ideas to your own life, whatever your challenges might be.
So before we get too deep into the philosophy itself, let's talk about Marcus Aurelius the man. He wasn't born an emperor, right?
No, he was adopted by the Emperor Antoninus Pius. Imagine being a teenager and suddenly knowing you're destined to rule the most powerful empire in the world. There's a story about him having a dream around that time, a dream of having ivory shoulders.
Ivory shoulders. That's a pretty vivid image. What do you think it symbolizes?
Strength, I'd say. The strength to carry the immense responsibilities that came with being emperor. And Marcus Aurelius certainly faced his fair share of challenges.
Like the Antonine Plague, for instance. That must have been devastating.
Absolutely. This pandemic swept through the empire during his reign, impacting everything from military campaigns to daily life. He had grand plans for Rome, and the plague definitely disrupted things. It makes you think about how even the most powerful people can be impacted by forces outside their control. And that brings us back to that core Stoic principle, focusing on what you can influence.
Which is, I'm guessing, where the whole idea of virtue as the sole good comes in.
Exactly. For Stoics, virtue is the ultimate goal. Not wealth, not pleasure, not even health. Those are all indifference.
Hold on. Indifference. Does that mean Stoics just don't care about those things? I mean, health seems pretty important.
It's not that you don't care. It's about recognizing that they're not inherently good or bad in themselves. They're morally neutral. It's how you approach them, how you let them affect your actions. That determines their impact on your pursuit of virtue. For example, imagine you're craving a delicious slice of cake. Indulging in the cake isn't inherently good or bad. It's your intention and approach that matter. Are you mindlessly giving in to the craving? Or are you savoring each bite with mindful awareness?
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So indifference doesn't equal unimportant. It's more about keeping them in perspective.
Precisely. Stoics even divide indifference into preferred and dispreferred. Health is preferred over sickness, wealth over poverty. But the key is not letting these things dictate your actions or define your happiness.
So even pleasure isn't considered a true good. That feels counterintuitive to how we usually think.
The Stoic reasoning is that pleasure can be fleeting and ultimately distracting from virtue. Take someone indulging in excessive luxury, for example. It's not that enjoying nice things is wrong, but if they become consumed by it, neglecting their duties and principles, then it's hindering their pursuit of a virtuous life.
Yet it's like those stories of lottery winners who end up miserable because they lose sight of what truly matters.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that true happiness and fulfillment come from within, from aligning your actions with virtue.
So this is making me think about the whole concept of free will. If virtue is the goal, but indifference can influence our choices. Do Stoics believe we actually have control over our actions?
That's where things get a bit more complex. Stoics believe in a type of determinism, the idea that the universe unfolds according to a cosmic plan, where everything is interconnected.
So kind of like fate, everything is predetermined.
In a way, yes. But they also place a huge emphasis on our internal disposition, our ability to choose how we respond to external events.
Okay, I'm a little confused. How can we have a choice if everything is already set in motion?
They use a helpful analogy, the cylindrical roller. Someone might push it to start it rolling, but the roller's ability to roll is inherent to its nature.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection. External forces can set things in motion, but our inner nature, like the shape of the roller, dictates how we react. But how does this play out in real life?
Think about dealing with a difficult coworker, for example. You can't control their behavior, but you can control your response. Do you get dragged into their negativity, or do you maintain your composure and choose a more skillful response?
That's a great example. So it's not about denying fate, but choosing how we navigate it.
Exactly. And that leads us to another fascinating Stoic concept, eternal recurrence.
Okay, now that one sounds really interesting. What is eternal recurrence?
Imagine the universe going through endless cycles of creation and destruction, with the same events recurring over and over again.
Wait, so everything happens again and again. Every heartbreak, every triumph, even this conversation.
That's the idea. It can seem daunting or even terrifying, but for a Stoic, it's a call to action. If you're going to live this life an infinite number of times, shouldn't you make choices you can stand by, choices that lead you towards virtue?
That's such a powerful perspective shift. It really raises the stakes on making decisions you won't regret over and over again.
But speaking of difficult choices, how did Marcus Aurelius balance these philosophical ideals with the very real demands of running an empire?
That's what we'll explore next as we delve into his personal reflections and meditations.
Because let's face it, even emperors have bad days, right? I'm curious to see how he applied these Stoic principles when things got tough.
You know what strikes me about meditations is how honest Marcus Aurelius is about his own struggles with Stoicism. He doesn't present himself as some perfectly enlightened sage.
It's refreshing to see that, isn't it? Even an emperor found it tough to live up to these ideals. It makes me feel a little better about my own struggles with, say, patience in rush hour traffic. Exactly. He was constantly facing pressures, rebellions, wars, that pesky pandemic. Yet he never stopped working on himself. He constantly turned to specific Stoic exercises to gain clarity and stay grounded.
Okay, I'm all about practical tips.
Yeah.
What kind of exercises are we talking about? Things I could actually try out in my own life.
Well, he was big on asking himself probing questions, peeling back the layers of a situation to get to the heart of it. It's like when you're feeling stressed about a problem, taking the time to ask, okay, what's truly within my control here, can shift your whole perspective.
That's a great technique, kind of like a mental declutter, getting rid of all the unnecessary worries to focus on what you can actually impact.
Precisely. And he was also a fan of reducing things to their bare essentials. This applies to everything from possessions to thoughts. It's about cutting through the noise and distractions to focus on what truly matters.
Yeah, I can see how that would be helpful, especially in today's world where we're bombarded with information and stimulation. It's easy to lose sight of what's truly important.
And perhaps his most powerful exercise was adopting a cosmic perspective. Imagine looking down at Earth from space, seeing the vastness of the universe, the eons of time. It puts our human concerns into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's almost like a visual reminder that our worries, however big they feel in the moment, are ultimately pretty small in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. And this leads us to a key concept in Stoicism, living in accordance with nature.
And when you say nature, you're not just talking about going for hikes in the woods, right?
Right. It's a broader concept. It's about recognizing our place within the natural order of the universe, understanding our human nature, and acting in a way that aligns with both. For Marcus Aurelius, it also meant accepting what's outside our control. He constantly reminded himself that he couldn't control external events, but he could control his reactions.
Which brings us back to that idea of virtue being the sole good. It's not about what happens to us, but how we choose to respond.
Exactly. And when it comes to virtue, Marcus Aurelius often refers to the four cardinal Stoic virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance.
Okay, so wisdom making smart choices, justice being fair to others, courage facing challenges head on, and temperance finding balance in all things. Those seem pretty straightforward. But how did he actually put them into practice?
That's where the real magic of meditations comes in. He doesn't just talk about these virtues abstractly. He brings them to life through his personal reflections and experiences.
Like that story about his dream of ivory shoulders. That seems like a great example of courage.
Absolutely. He wasn't talking about physical bravery in that moment, but the courage to bear the weight of leadership, to make difficult decisions for the good of the empire.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what kinds of dilemmas he faced and how he used those Stoic principles to guide him.
And then there's this line that I find so insightful: waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. It's a reminder that virtue isn't about talking the talk, it's about walking the walk.
It's easy to get caught up in theorizing about what's right and wrong, but actually embodying those virtues in our daily lives is the real challenge.
Exactly. And he also had a fascinating observation about preferring calm acceptance over surprise. It speaks to the virtue of wisdom, recognizing that unexpected events are part of life, and choosing to meet them with a clear mind.
Instead of getting flustered or upset when things don't go according to plan, we can choose to accept them and adapt.
Exactly. And that ties into another one of his insights. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. It's such a powerful reframe, turning obstacles into opportunities for growth.
It reminds me of this saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. but with a Stoic twist.
And then there's his observation about finding beauty in unexpected places, even in what we might consider flaws or imperfections. He talks about the cracks in bread or the wrinkles on a lion's brow, finding them charming and attractive.
It's like a challenge to appreciate the beauty in imperfection, to find the good even in the less than ideal.
He even uses a beautiful analogy of a vine bearing fruit without seeking reward. It's a perfect illustration of selfless action, doing what's right simply because it's the right thing to do, not for recognition or personal gain.
It's a reminder to shift our focus from external validation to internal alignment with virtue.
And perhaps one of his most practical pieces of advice is to erase the imprint of the impression. It's about detaching from external influences that can cloud our judgment and control our emotions.
Okay, I need you to break that one down for me. What exactly does he mean by imprint of the impression?
Imagine you're stuck in traffic. The traffic jam itself is the external event. The imprint of the impression is your frustration, your anger, that urge to honk your horn. It's about recognizing those emotional reactions and choosing not to let them dictate your behavior.
So it's about creating a space between the external event and our internal reaction, giving us the power to choose how we want to respond.
Exactly. It's a powerful technique for anyone who struggles with managing their emotions, whether it's road rage, relationship trauma, or even just everyday stress.
It sounds like a form of mindfulness, becoming aware of those automatic reactions and choosing a more skillful response.
Precisely. And this leads us to another important question. How did Marcus Aurelius suggest we deal with other people, especially those who are difficult or challenging?
Because let's face it, even emperors have to deal with difficult people, right? I'm curious to hear his take on navigating those tricky interpersonal situations.
Marcus Aurelius had some fascinating insights into this. He believed that even when faced with difficult people, we should approach them with kindness and understanding. You know, in Meditations, he writes, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury.
Yeah, it's like choosing to break the cycle of negativity, responding with grace instead of getting caught up in the drama.
Exactly. He even suggests that when people do wrong, they're actually harming themselves more than anyone else. It's a reminder that everyone is battling their own internal demons, making the best choices they can, with the knowledge they have at that moment.
It makes me think about the saying, hurt people, instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness. Maybe we can try to see the pain behind their actions.
It's a radical idea, but very much in line with Stoic philosophy. Choosing compassion and understanding even when it's hard can be incredibly powerful. And remember that even Marcus Aurelius, an emperor with immense power, struggled with these ideas.
It's reassuring in a way, isn't it? It shows that Stoicism isn't about achieving some perfect state of enlightenment, but rather a continuous journey of growth and self-reflection.
Absolutely. We're all works in progress. Meditations isn't a rule book, but rather a collection of personal reflections and reminders. It's like having a wise mentor whispering in your ear, nudging you to examine your thoughts and actions, and make choices aligned with virtue.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, what are some key takeaways from Meditations that our listener can apply to their life?
Well, first and foremost, remember that virtue is the sole good. Focus on your character and actions, not on things outside your control, like other people's opinions or external events.
Right, easier said than done, especially in today's world. With social media and the constant pressure to compare ourselves to others, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters.
That's where those Stoic exercises can come in handy. Remember that cosmic perspective. Imagine yourself looking down at Earth from space. All those worries and anxieties suddenly feel much smaller, don't they?
Definitely. It's a great way to gain some detachment and perspective when things feel overwhelming.
And don't forget about reducing things to their bare essentials. When you're feeling stressed or lost, ask yourself, what's truly important here? What's within my control? What can I let go of? It's like applying a minimalist filter to your thoughts and emotions.
Less is more.
Yeah.
But for your inner world. I love that.
And when it comes to dealing with others, remember Marcus Aurelius' advice about kindness. Approach people with empathy and understanding, even when they're difficult. It might not always be easy. But choosing compassion can ultimately lead to more peaceful and fulfilling relationships.
It's about seeing the humanity in everyone, recognizing that we're all doing the best we can with the knowledge we have.
Exactly. And finally, remember that Stoicism is a lifelong journey, not a destination. We're all going to make mistakes. Stumble along the way. The key is to keep learning, keep striving to align our actions with virtue, and keep using tools like meditations to guide us along the way.
So is there one thought-provoking question from Meditations that you would leave our listener with today? something to spark further reflection, and maybe even inspire them to explore Stoicism on their own.
Marcus Aurelius asks a powerful question. What is my command center to me? What am I making it at the moment? It's a challenge to examine our own minds, our values, and our motivations. What are we prioritizing in our lives? What are we allowing to control our thoughts and actions?
Yeah, what kind of person are we becoming? That's a profound question to ponder.
It is. And it's something we can ask ourselves not just today, but every day. Meditations reminds us that we have the power to shape our own minds, our characters, and ultimately our destinies.
So to our listener, we encourage you to dive into meditations and discover the richness of Stoic wisdom for yourself. It's a timeless guide to navigating life's challenges and living a more meaningful, virtuous life. You might be surprised by how relevant its insights feel, even centuries later,